Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday for this session of Accidental Librarian with Patrick Bodily. I'm going to do a few cleanup things before we get started, and then I will turn it over to him. We have some upcoming events for Ckls. On March 21st, we will have the Best of Summer Library Program webinar. It's at 1:30 with Patty and Diane. It will be recorded and it will be archived. On March 24th, we will have our first Explore the Questions That Matter group, Explorers group for short. It will be at the Clifton Clyde High School. And then we have another one in April, which will be at the Lincoln School. And then we have a couple in Kerwin and Glen Elder and McCracken. And then we still have one more school that we're waiting to get scheduled out. I hope you guys can join us for that, because it's going to be time for you to see other libraries, talk with those librarians and how they do stuff, so you can get their tips and tricks. And then also just talk about other librarian things. Also, we have on March 31st, we will go over the 2023 proposed system plan. Gail is going to present that to the executive board tomorrow, and then she'll go over that with you on March 31st. That is also an online webinar. On April 6th, we will have an in-person workshop. In the morning, we have SLP idea swap for you to bring your best of programming ideas and crafts and to share them with everybody else. And that will be at the Lucas Community Center, which is connected to the Lucas Library. They have a new building that they've been working on the last couple of years. It went into their old grocery store and it looks very nice. We're going to try that. We have lunch, spaghetti lunch we're bringing in. And then in the afternoon, we have the directors meeting on April 6th. And over lunch, we will also have our Pathfinder Central Trailblazers committee meeting. We'll be meeting there over lunch as well. And then finally, on April 19th, we will have Tuesdays with Ckls for April, and it's called Self-Censorship, or We Don't Have Those Types of Books at My Library. And that will be archived and online as well. Okay, so again, thank you for joining us today. I want to welcome Patrick Bodily. He's from Independence, Oregon, from Independence Public Library. I have to be specific because we have an Independence in Kansas too. So we want to make sure that we are clear. And I was fortunate enough to hear him speak at ARSL in Reno last fall. And I've heard him before. He's always presented at ARSL and he's one of my favorites. So I was very excited that he agreed to present to us today. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us, and take it away.
All right, thank you. I am excited to be here today. I have to admit, other than 100% stereotypes, I know nothing about Kansas. And so what I kind of want to do, I understand, please be as comfortable as you want, turn video on and off. To me, it's not going to matter because I will be sharing my screen and relying on Mary Beth to let me know when other people raise their hands or are talking in chat. But just before we get going, am I correct in assuming that everyone here works in or around public libraries, or do we have school libraries and academic libraries that are part of Ckls?
We have our public librarians here today. There's a couple that do a little bit of both, but they're
Gotcha.
Public librarians today.
Okay, perfect. I want to see, just by raise of hand or being brave, how many of you right out of school planned on being a librarian? All right, how many of you didn't plan on being a librarian? Okay, that's more hands, and that's kind of why I'm here, is because I am also what I like to call an accidental librarian. So I'm going to start sharing my screen if I can. I understood it took a hair to get going last time. So if you just kind of holler someone when you can see the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So that's us. My name is Patrick. I'm library director at the Independence Public Library here in Independence, Oregon. And we'll talk kind of about my route to get to this library in just a few slides. So to start, we're going to start about what is an accidental librarian. Because if we want to not just survive, but we want to thrive as an accidental librarian, we should figure out what exactly an accidental librarian is. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our bright-eyed, baby-faced protagonist here. And this is my story about how I got to be where I am. Oh, I love that picture. I was at a concert with my soon-to-be wife that night, and she snapped that. So I try to show it off as often as I can. So was going to college at Utah State University up in North Utah in Logan, and I needed a job because I liked food and wanted to pay tuition. And so I was working at a place called Youth Track Utah. That is what this building is. And what Youth Track is a group home for juvenile male sex offenders. It was 100% a job and not a career. And in working there, I learned 100% that this was a job and not a career. This was not the path for me at all. It was not something that I wanted to go down. At the time, I was, like I said, I was working on my undergrad and I was getting my degree in history. And I thought, like every bright-eyed college freshman, sophomore who loves school, you know what, I just want to stay in the academic world for forever. Maybe I could go on and get my master's or my PhD and actually become a history professor. And while I was at school, luckily, I had an awesome advisor who, my history professor, who asked me, what do you want to do when you graduate? And I told him, well, I'm going to go on to grad school. I'm going to get my master's and PhD. I'm going to find a history program so I can focus on history. And this tenured professor who was 5 years from retirement looked at me and said, don't do that. That's the dumbest plan you could ever have. Why do you want to be a history professor? I know what it takes, and I want to know why you want to do that. So I kind of explained it to him. I said, well, I don't know that I like teaching, but I really, really like the research and hanging out in the archives and doing stuff in the library. And he said, perfect. Don't be a history professor. There are a couple of different schools that you can go to, you can look at later on, that will give you a dual master's degree in history and a master's degree in library science. And you could apply to them, you could get both those degrees, and then you could go work in the archives, work in libraries, and you don't have to worry about doing any of that stuff. And I thought, that's perfect. I'm going to look into doing that. And now, then luckily, my senior year of high school, or excuse me, of college, knowing that youth track was not the path for me, a job opened up at the university library as a student employee supervisor over the course reserves and over the library media collection. And I was dumb enough to think, you know what, I've got this supervisor experience supervising kids and other employees at Youth Track. Maybe I could supervise student employees and work at the library. This is kind of what I want to do anyway. And I must have had a really good day or interviewed really, really well, but they hired me. And so my senior year at the university, I spent working as a full-time employee for the university as well, back library media collections, course reserves, and supervising the student employees. That gave me a glimpse of what I thought collection development was, which was the professors tell you what to put on course reserves and what to take off. And for the media side of things, it just shows up from cataloging. And so that's what your collection is that way. And so I finished up my senior year while at Utah State, while I was working at the library. And my wife and I became pregnant with who would be our daughter, and realized, oh, this plan of going somewhere else for grad school and doing a master's degree just got a big hiccup in it. We can stay here at Utah State and we can keep our insurance and have our baby, and maybe I could figure something out, or we could leave and move out of state because none of the programs we were looking at were in Utah, where we had residency at the time, and have an out-of-state baby and have no insurance and be in grad school. And that prospect just really wasn't looking really good. So luckily, I sat down with my advisor again, sat down and we figured out, you know what, if you take a year off and just work, this dual master's program is a 3-year program. And so you're going to go and you're going to be done in 4 years. Or you can do your 2-year program, master's degree in history, get in-state tuition and an employee discount at Utah State, and then go find another 2-year program for the Master's of Library Science. You'll end up with both degrees. You'll have 4 years. It's going to be the same time. And I thought, great, let's do that. So the whole time I was working at the Utah State Library, I also was working on a master's in history program. Took all the classes, started working on the thesis, and out of nowhere, one day I was browsing the job ads that came through the university and saw a position open up for a library director in Richfield, Utah. I am assuming that no one has been to Richfield. If you've been to Richfield, it's because you were driving from Denver to LA and needed a rest stop on I-70. But I looked at this job and I thought, you know what? They were wanting, you know, master's degree preferred, X years of library experience, all that stuff. And I thought, well, I almost have a master's degree in history. That's kind of the same thing as a master's in library science. And I've worked for 2.5 years at a university library, so I absolutely could be a library director. And I went down, I applied and I interviewed, and Richfield, which is this gorgeous Carnegie library, was dumb enough or kind enough or had the foresight to realize that I could learn a lot on the job. And so my first public library job was as a director in Richfield, Utah, in central Utah. It was great. I learned a lot there. I learned how to work with boards because I didn't have to do that before. I learned that there were actually library laws that I had to follow because I didn't really know that before. I learned collection development was more than just waiting for the professors to tell you what to buy. I learned that programming was a thing because we didn't really do that in the course reserve section, right? I learned all these different things that I didn't really know at the time. And I was there for maybe only 2.5, almost 3 years. My wife grew up in Eastern Idaho, and we kind of had this understanding that if anything job-wise ever opened up in Eastern Idaho, we should at least apply, because unlike grad school applications, job applications don't cost you anything. And there was a job that opened up at the Idaho Commission for Libraries, which is Idaho's state library agency that they rebranded to the Commission for Libraries. As a library consultant, the position was for a library consultant and state data coordinator. So all you library directors, it's the position that you have to submit your annual report to. And then the person at the state that would be, we don't have cool regional things like Ckls in Idaho. We just had the state library agency. And so I was kind of the go-to, hey, I've got this question. Hey, I'm wondering how to work with my board. I looked at that position and again, never finished that master's degree in history, still didn't start that master's degree in library science, and thought, okay, well, I've worked with boards. It's been 2 years, so I know a lot. And I've done 2.5 years of collection development and all these things. So I should apply for this job at the Idaho Commission for Libraries. And just like Richfield, the Idaho Commission for Libraries was either dumb enough or brave enough to hire me to work at the state library agency to help work with other accidental librarians, librarians, so they could learn how to better run their libraries, so they could learn how to work with their board. And I loved that job because I was able to work with people who, like myself, just accidentally fell into the job and wanted to succeed and do the best for their communities. I always had this feeling though, and my wife did too, that one day we were going to leave that state role aside and get back to a local level. And so early in 2020, in February, there was a job posting to be a library director over in the Willamette Valley of Oregon, just outside of Salem and Independence. And I applied in February. And then in March happened of 2020. And in April, they called and said, we want to interview you. And so we kind of took a drive out and realized in May, June, after walking through the library, talking to people late April, May, that there was no better time in the Earth's history to pick up your family and move across 2 states to be the library director in a whole new city that you've never been to before until you actually walked through that library than 2020. So we did that. I am currently the library director. I also work, the city has a museum, Heritage Museum, and I work with the Parks Department as well. And still no library degree, never finished that master's degree in history. I am a perfect example, not to brag, of that accident, of the accidental librarian, and I'm working on being better at the librarian part of being a librarian. So let's talk a little bit more about that. What is a librarian? In his book, it's called Our Enduring Values, Librarianship in the 21st Century. Michael Gorman, he defines as a librarian as a person who, one, earns a master's level education at an accredited school, and two, receives on-the-job training, as well as carries out one or more of these following tasks: selecting materials, acquiring those materials that you select, organizing them, preserving them, assisting people, instructing people, managing the library, which is all great. But what about all those of us who do all of those things and even more, but don't have the right letters after our email signature, that we don't have that degree? I would argue that yes, we're librarians if we're doing library work. I 100% think that we are. So what we need to do is we need to look at what it is that librarians need to know. And so first thing the librarians need to know is the philosophy, theory, principles, techniques of acquiring, collecting, organizing, retrieving, and disseminating information, how to apply them and adapt them to constantly changing environments. We also need to know the role of computers, the internet, emerging technologies in libraries. We need to know basic library materials and resources, also methods and techniques for researching, analyzing, synthesizing, and delivering. We should probably know reference interviewing techniques and how to do community needs assessments and library planning processes, and of course budgeting, don't forget budgeting, and policy creation and development methods and management methods. And I was just working on politics because we're trying to bring an amendment to the city council. The list is just going to keep growing no matter what, right? How many of you can feel like this? I know I do all the time. It can be a bit overwhelming to know everything that we need to know. So at the risk of greatly oversimplifying things, I'd like to talk today about what it is that librarians really need to know, especially librarians like myself who accidentally fell face first into this job. Based on our time, obviously this is going to be a short and general list, but let's get going there. The first thing that you need to know is that you've got this, right? You can be, but you don't need to be a trailblazing pioneer. Let me say that again. You can be, but you don't need to be. Many, many, many people have come before us. We stand on the shoulders of giants, as they say, and we should use their expertise to better ourselves, to better our libraries, and to better our communities. So number one, don't forget, you've got this. You're there for a reason, right? We should also, just because we're librarians, know the 5 laws of library science. It's a theory proposed in 1931 that details the principles of the operating of a library system. So one, preservation and storage are important, but the purpose of both preservation and storage is to promote use of your library collection. Without user access to materials, there is very little value in your materials. If people can't get it, why do you have it? That's the principle number one. Number two, a library's books have place in the collection, even if a smaller group of your population, of your users, of your community uses that. Those books should still be in the collection. Number three, librarians, we have to remember, we serve a wide variety of patrons. So we should acquire items that fit that wide variety of needs and not judge what it is that they choose to read. Number four, people should be able to easily locate what it is that they want, and they should be able to do it quickly and efficiently. And the 5th law of library science is basically saying that a library should be a continually changing institution. it needs to be updated over time. That's why we need to know those things, right? And then the third thing that you need to know is that you're not alone. Those same people who've gone before, the people that tell us that you've got this, there are people that have gone before, and everyone is willing and able to help you out. People at Ckls, people at your state library and associations, national associations, even me, who some of you have never seen before. I want to see you succeed. We want to see you succeed. Does everyone here know the name of someone who they could contact with questions? If not, I'm really, really confused as to why you're here at a Ckls training, but please reach out. Ckls is an amazing resource. Use them. They are the same thing that I told people in Idaho. The same thing I tell people now is the same thing that everyone at Ckls will tell you. You're not an interruption to their day. You are the reason that they have a job. And so if we can work together and work, then know that you're the reason they have that job in the first place, right? So we want to talk today with the rest of our time about a few different aspects of the day-to-day part of running the library. Now that we kind of have the basics behind it, let's talk about what it is that you can do. Have a few more tools in your tool belt so you can feel more comfortable doing your job, so that we all can feel comfortable doing our jobs. So first, we're going to talk about collection development. The number one thing, the very first thing that you should do, and this is if you have no other notes for collection development today, is first of all, create or locate or update your collection development policy. Remember that a good collection development policy is one, individualized for your community, and that it should include things like your library's mission statement. It should include the purpose behind the policy. It should include maybe a profile of your community and your community's information needs. And it can include a description of your library's collection if you've already got that. And then general collection policy, which is like how old, the age of the materials that you're going to have, what formats you collect, what languages you collect, right? What do you do with multiple copies? What do you do with donations? What do you do? How are your library's materials funded? How do you purchase them? You could also talk about what it is that you do to select criteria, what you do with suggestions for purchase, how often you weed, how often you maintain that collection, repair, what you do with replacements, and then of course what you do with subject areas, right that way. And so what you're going to do, a big part of collection development, as we know, is weeding, right? So to weed, what you should do is you should take one section of your library at a time, and you're going to pick either that set of shelves or that part in your catalog or whatever, and you just want to look at your use, the turnover rate, so how often things are checking out, your interlibrary loan stats, and then also, of course, don't forget that you want your books to be visually appealing. So scan that section and make sure they look good. Make recommendations to either yourself, if you're that person, or the person who is responsible for weeding or responsible for acquisitions or for weeding, and say, okay, we need to get rid of this, or okay, we need to buy something to replace this. And then the most important part of weeding is to move on to the next selection, or the next section of shelving that way. Okay. And then I do have just a few tips that I want to tell, that I want to share, I guess, about to be a good selector, right? Because you'd want to have materials that are good for your library, good for your public. Number one, review your collection development policy for currency, right? If you have a collection development policy, that's great. If you have a collection development policy that's 25 years old and hasn't been looked at since then, then you should probably update that, right? You need to read reviews, keep updated in a variety of publications by a wide range of reviewers, not necessarily because you're going to buy everything, and definitely not everything because we don't have the time to read everything, but know that there is a wide range of people, right? Look into subscriptions. I'm not saying you have to, but if it helps you, look into subscriptions to Library Journal, Publishers Weekly, Book List, New York Times Book Review. Obviously consult bibliographies and core collections and know what's going on that way in the world and in your community there. And if nothing else, please remember that when you're weeding and when you're buying, avoid coming to gut conclusions about what subjects or genres your community members are or aren't interested. Abandon, for lack of better words, abandon the just get what you like point of view or method. Remember to represent all points of view. And I know that I'm awesome. I know that you all are awesome, but my personal reading preferences and your personal reading preferences are not 100% in line with every person inside your community, because there's no way that that can even be a thing. So with that in mind, what do you have? What tools, assuming everyone here has been on the job for more than one day, what tools do you have as far as collection development goes that we can see? I'm going to stop sharing and let people answer in the chat. Raise your hand, turn on camera if you're brave, and tell us, what have you learned about collection development? What helps you?
This is Mary Beth, and I'll get the conversation started. Ckls does help a lot with weeding. We do have a standard that you weed 3% of your collection every year, and I help track that, and I will help in October. If you're not close to meeting that 3%, I will look at your records and make suggestions about things that maybe haven't checked out in 5-10 years and give you suggestions. We can also come out and do a one-time visit and help weed your collection. We will train you how to weed. We will walk you through it, but we will also, if your collection hasn't been weeded in a long time, if you're running out of space, if you're moving to a new location and you don't want to move all those books because some of them probably shouldn't be moved, that's what we're here for, to help. I do see in the chat, Angel says she uses Ckls and her brains. That's very important. Use your brains. Levita says she asks patrons what books they want. There are reports on Koha that will help clean up your collection, and Michael or myself, or I think even Liz and Diane have reports that they can help you with there. Barb says looking at what the patrons borrow and what they request that the library does not have. So looking at those interlibrary loan requests. Amy says, what I've learned is there is no rhyme or reason to what people like. Going off of best-selling or upcoming books have helped find what to bring in. With weeding, Ckls has some amazing reports to run to help with that. And then Michael adds that one of the reports we have is a super weeder, which gives your whole collection, when it was last borrowed, how many times it was borrowed, when it was put into the collection. And that really helps with that weeding. And Raimi says, I engage my patrons in conversation about what they like.
Perfect. And that's really the key right there. I mean, we need to talk to our people. I mean, just as simple as putting in a suggestion box, right? It could be something that helps you get more items for what you said. I really just echoing again what Amy said, there's no rhyme or reason to what people want. And so we have to ask them, right? That's really what that is. So let's move on then. Reader's reference. So all kinds of libraries provide readers advisory services. These services, either school or public, help match the library customer with the materials that they want. They promote the library in reading. They encourage the concept that the library is a community center. and they can increase circulation, right? That's why we're doing this. Also important to remember, reader's reference is not format specific. So we are going to give reader's reference on DVDs and books and audios and electronic materials and magazines and everything that we've got. We want to be able to let people know that we have, right? Now, the reason that this can and be and is challenging is, I don't know about you, but I don't think any librarian can know enough about your collection and your customers to make good recommendations to every single person all of the time. But the longer you work in a particular library and the more familiar you become with its customers and their reading preferences, the better you're going to be at reader's advisory. So this is something that just, it takes time and it takes practice. So what you can do to start, if you haven't already, is make learning the collection in all formats a priority. When I moved to Independence, the library was still closed because of the pandemic. We had no patrons coming in. And they hadn't even started curbside yet until the week or two after I started. So there wasn't even a way for me to go and talk to people because there just weren't people. So what did I do? I had to walk through the shelf. I started running some weeding reports, but get to know the collection and walk around do that way. One of the best ways that you can get to know your collection or get to know materials that you can use for reader's reference or reader's advisory is to read. Read books, listen to CDs, read tables of contents, watch movies. If you know what it is because you read it or you've watched it or you've listened to it, that's really what it is. Similar to collection development, if you kind of monitor the bestsellers lists and keep reading reviews and know popular reading club selections, that's the way to do that. And if you can, listen to author interviews and book review podcasts, things like that. Those of us that are lucky enough to have more than one person at our library, remember to work with others at your library because this doesn't have to all fall on you. What you can do, what has helped me is keeping kind of a reading log with short notes about books as well as feedback from library users, right? So not just this is what I've read and this is what I like, but hey, you know, Jane came in and she really liked this, and so this is what she said about it. These are the kinds of things that maybe people who I know that are like Jane or who I've seen checking out the same things as Jane would like this book as well, right? We can ask them to make comments about what it is that they're currently reading or watching, and then keep index cards at your front desk just for that purpose, right? Okay, I spoke with Susan and she said, let's do this. And then you have that note right up front. You could use your library's website to help recommend books. Create lists, those if you like, then you will like lists, similar to current bestsellers or similar to other things that people have read. And of course, discuss new materials and the kind of readers who might enjoy them when you have staff meetings, right? This is the time when you as library staff can come together and actually talk about things. So what is something that someone else has seen because you're not at the desk 100% of the time or you're off that day that are going out? So same question, what readers advisory tips do you all have? And we can just go through comments, yeah. And of course, unmute if you're brave. Remy, again, encouraging patrons in conversation about what they like. Oh, and I'm interested, Remy, chime in the comments, but has the nonfiction surge been new, or is that something that has always been and you're just catching up to that trend? So let me know there.
Yeah, and Michael, remind everybody that our new patron catalog has a lot of that reader's advisory tools built in. So make sure you use those. Those are really handy as well, especially when you have a painter come in and wants to know what's an author like this other one and you're not familiar with them. That way, you know, unfortunately, we cannot read every book in our library, but this is the ways that you can at least give them some educated suggestions, some helpful suggestions.
So I just learned, is that a Koha thing, Michael?
Yes.
Oh, do you want to come and convince my consortia to get off of Cersei Dynex then?
We do like
could do that.
Koha. Yeah, we do like Koha.
That is awesome. I wish we had that.
It's actually a new interface called Aspen Discovery, which is a discovery layer put on the OPAC.
Gotcha. Okay, that's really cool. Like, yeah, so use that. And everyone, I did do enough research. You're all on that shared Koha, correct?
Mhm.
So everyone has access to that. Keep using that.
We have a couple libraries that aren't, but most of us have
Oh,
those
okay.
access. And then the ones that don't can go to the patron side and still use the Aspen Discovery side of it. We do have a couple more comments. Connie says that she has a few patrons that she asks about a new author and then purchase if they like some more. And she's found some great authors that way. Amy from Otis says that if there is an author, series, or subject a patron likes, they will be very vocal about it. Lately has been parents asking for reading levels and others wanting nonfiction for children's and upwards.
Gotcha.
And then Raimi does respond that she had some teen guys that had a strong interest in nonfiction topics, not knife making, blacksmithing, and other great hands-on stuff. So she had some patrons come in that started that focus on building her nonfiction.
That is awesome. Yeah, listen to your people. That's really the best way that we're going to get it going. So being respectful of people's time, let me keep going. So outreach services, what we're going to talk about is really, you don't need a bookmobile, you don't need anything like that. Really all outreach is, at least for us today, is reaching people you serve who are not able to come into the library. Now, that can be done with a bookmobile, that can be done through books by mail, that can be done by homebound services, or going to the nursing home, or bringing services to kids in daycare centers. And of course, you can absolutely take advantage of the talking book service, which is something that services for the deaf, hard of hearing, those that are unable to work with print anymore. But please, please, please take advantage. Outreach really is important because we're not in business, for lack of a better word. I hate business talk, but we don't come to the library to just work with people who come to the library. We really are here for our communities and need to be able to reach people where they're at. So again, with that in mind, what do you have that you can share with me that I need to learn more about outreach?
I know some of our libraries have they take books to inbound, our homebound patrons, so they do that home delivery option. And we've worked really hard system-wide to build up our digital library collection. So we have Sunflower eLibrary, which is part of Overdrive, and we have Hoopla, which Ckls put some money in, and then our libraries can as well. And then our state library has Cloud Library and a couple others. I'm not remembering them all right now. So we have several online library collections that we also promote as well.
Awesome. That's really, really good. Yeah, so just remember, get to people digitally, get to people virtually. Before I start again, Diane just chimed in. They have one library that has a shelf in the local motel, which they lit up with donations, right? And that's it doesn't need to be your collection too. We're gonna go through and weed things, right? And maybe you wanna put them somewhere that you don't care if they come back or not. You're still slap your sticker on the front that says, you know, made possible by the friends of the, or your, or whatever your rules say you have to do. Then people still they have that warm fuzzy from the library, even if it's not a library material.
We also have, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say Sherry's taking stuff to the senior center. Awesome.
And I was going to add to a Ckls program we've started. We used to have books by mail, but we had to sundown that. So we got a grant to replace it with the iPad project, which right now is just for those books by mail patrons that live rurally, and they can check out an iPad, and then they can access the digital library, but it also have internet access and they can use it however they see fit. And our hope is that in the next few months, we'll be able to expand that to all rural patrons that live in our area. They'll be able to check it out for 3 months and then possibly renew if there's nobody waiting. And they get to use it as their iPad for checking out books, using social media, email, whatever. When it's returned to us, it's wiped clean so that none of their personal data is kept and it goes on to the next patron. So that's something we're really excited about. And that's a big outreach step that all of your patrons that live rurally would have access to.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And it looks like Diane added, did anyone see the kiosk in the Wichita airport? She's gonna look for a link for that one. And Angel from Delphus says that she takes her weeded books to give a book, take a book boxes. So that's also a good place to see those around. Several little tiny library kiosks that you see around towns. I've seen them pop up all over. You know, they always need restocked, I think. So that's always a place for it. Making those connections with the senior setters and this, you know, the care homes or waiting rooms or something like that is also a great place to advertise your services and maybe get rid of some of those free books.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. I really want to see this kiosk and hear a little bit more about that shelf at the motel. That sounds great to me. So next we're going to hit advocacy. Again, short on time. This is like an entire college level course that we're going to break down in 2 minutes. But basically what advocacy is for us today is the art of pleading for or arguing in favor of something. And in our case, we are advocating for the library. And here's your key for advocacy today. If you get nothing else about the advocacy section, I need you to remember that we need to treat our libraries like mayonnaise. Yes, like mayonnaise. Let me explain, please, because otherwise people will just think that I'm crazy. I personally am not a mayonnaise connoisseur. I don't have a refined palate. I can tell the difference between Miracle Whip and mayonnaise, but if you're talking Best Foods or Hellman's versus Great Value versus Kroger brand, I've got nothing about that. And yet I do have some mayonnaise in my fridge. And the reason why is because mayonnaise is marketed everywhere. If you are driving or you're watching a NASCAR race, there's a NASCAR car that is sponsored by mayonnaise. I was watching a basketball game the other night, and on the board, the little scoreboard that comes up, there's a mayonnaise ad popped up. There are bus ads and billboards and commercials, and just if you really think about it, you are hit with mayonnaise marketing more often than you think about it. Now remember, I'm not this mayonnaise connoisseur, but the last time I was in the grocery store, I knew that I was out of mayonnaise and we needed to buy mayonnaise, and I walked along and I thought of the little jingle from my childhood, bring out the best foods and bring out the best. And I picked up the Best Foods mayonnaise and I put it in my cart and I bought it. And the reason why isn't because, again, I have this refined mayonnaise palate. It's because I knew what I needed and I knew that that filled my need. And so libraries need to act more like mayonnaise. There have been countless times where we have come up with the perfect program, the perfect opportunity for people, the perfect new initiative at our library, and we spend hours and days planning and preparing, and no one comes, or one person comes. And it's not because we didn't do a good job planning or we didn't do a good job preparing. It's because maybe we weren't marketing or talking about the library in the right way. If we act more like mayonnaise and we put our name and we put the library's brand out there more often, then when people realize, hey, this is what I need, the first place they'll think is the library. For example, if you have access from Ckls or from the state library to all of these digital ebooks that have been provided, and you say advertise it, and you have flyers up at your library, and you put ads in the radio station if you can do that, and ads in the newspaper, and put a flyer in the utility bill, and you mention it every time someone comes in, maybe they're not going to check out right that day. But then when something happens and they say, you know, I really am looking for a new book, or hey, I just got this new iPad, or I'm looking for, the first place that they're going to think of is the library, because they've had that library messaging. This is a need that the library can fill. And so this is where I'm going to go. I know the library can fill this. It works with like your databases too, right? I am working on a car and I need Chilton's, but I can't make it into the library. Well, I know they have the digital Chilton's database, or I know they have Ancestry and I'm trying to figure out about my ancestors. Just market what it is that you've got, advocate what it is that you've got. And then when people need what you have, you'll be the first person that they think of. What are some ways that you have seen that work for advocating for your libraries?
I don't want to stop anybody from chatting, but I did want to make note that Diane did put the link to the Wichita Public Library's Facebook page, and you have the kiosk there in the picture, and it's kind of cool. So take a look there.
It sounds like it's local short stories, so that's even cooler. So I want to read more about it, but not right now.
15 minutes, Diane. It's yours in 15 minutes. Is there anything that anyone's currently working on that they'd like a feedback on? This is what I'm trying to do.
What are
And
some
if
of
the
your
answer is
ideas
no,
for programs?
That's okay. Cool. Well, let's go forward and be like mayonnaise. Like there's work to do. That's great.
I do like that analogy. I wrote that down. Be like mayonnaise.
I'm gonna say something because I have been sending out something. This is Liz with Ckls. Has anyone seen my email about helping us out with the catalog cleanup? I've gotten a lot of emails and I want to thank everybody for helping out.
Cheryl, I saw your hand up, but I do have a comment from Formoso, and then we'll go for Cheryl. Barbara Formoso says we are setting up a display for open house to show our services, but she's not quite sure how to show those services. I'm guessing in that display. So
that can be tricky. My question is going to be, what services and who do you know that's already doing it?
So I'm guessing like if they're already doing it, they could take a photo or something of the library doing that and then put that into display. Is that what you're thinking?
That, and if they're already doing it, then how have they advertised that they're doing it too? So you can take pictures and use these other people who are already doing what you're doing as an example, not only for how to do it, but how to market it. Kind of thing. That's a tricky one. I am happy to chat. I know that Ckls will be too, but yeah, afterwards, I got a slide with email. Let me know, and we can go with that.
And Cheryl, I saw your hand up. Did you have a question?
Not really. I just wanted to say that the last 2 years that we've been going through this pandemic and we're coming out of it, and libraries are opening back up and inviting people in, that it's time to be brave and step out of your box and do something different. We've been pleased with some of the efforts that we've made, and we're seeing more traffic into our library, and our outreach has helped a lot. And so we're hoping that'll carry through the summer, but it's just nothing's wrong to try is what I want to say. Just be brave and try and make a difference within your community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Mhm.
I think she makes a good point that I'm going to spin a little bit. 2 years ago, how many Zoom meetings had you been to compared to now? Right? There's something that comes with comfort and doing things over and over again. So with that in mind, let's hit our last topic for the day anyway, not the last topic ever, programming. So we obviously want to talk a little bit about programming. That's a big part of why libraries are here, but let's work to not get stuck presenting the same programs with the same presenters year in and year out. So how can we do that? How can we get ideas for new programs? How can we move forward? One of the best ways I've seen is just the same way that we talked about collection development. Ask community members, ask them to share their hobbies or experiences. Ask them to, if they're willing to come and talk, if they're willing to come and be a part. Also, there's education programs at local museums that routinely make community presentations. So go ahead and reach out to people like that. Local fire departments and police absolutely can come and do a show and tell on a variety of different topics, not just, hey, I'm a firefighter and this is a thing, but they could talk CPR, they could talk safety, they could talk.
Did you catch her? Okay, thanks.
And then we can also ask veterinarians or doctors or bakeries or karate instructors or newspaper reporters or artists, musicians, authors, TV personalities, not only for ideas, but also if they're willing to present. And of course, don't forget your adults. Book discussion groups are important. Classes on things like how to find health information or the databases and electronic resources that the library offers and how to use them from home. So not just what we've got, but how you can actually use it. You could do computer skills for anyone that needs it. You could do computer training in basic skills like word processing or email or spreadsheets. ESL classes, exhibits and displays, knitting groups. I really like that Wichita is highlighting the local authors. So if you have local authors, have them come and talk. Those are kind of the ideas behind the programming, is that we don't want it to get stale. We don't want it to be just for kids or just for adults, kind of be more well-rounded. I saw my screen pop up with a million different chat notifications. So let's get caught up on that. All right, someone tell me, Diane or Cheryl, tell me about Cheryl's programs during shutdown.
Well, we started offering deliveries. We always went to the nursing home, but then we started delivering to the nursing home books and puzzles and coloring activities. We did our outreach to our daycares and took books and activities, and we did a weekly video. They were just, featuring a book, and they were kind of goofy, as my husband would say, but I would tell him, you're not my target audience. It's all my little friends that enjoy the library. So we had grab and go activities at the front desk. We tried to make on our Facebook page, tried to make our presence known and our services that we were willing to give, and just really tried to be a presence when we were going through, still offering what we could to our patrons. So we tried to be brave. If something didn't work, we'd try something else.
Perfect.
When Cheryl, the best ones that Cheryl did was she and her camera person went downtown to the businesses and got to go to the grocery store, like into the meat cutting area and into the bank vault. It was really, really cool. And I applaud her for those videos. And I hope you keep doing them because I'm enjoying them.
Well, we're going to have at least another month. We'll see through April. We're gonna end May until summer library starts. So anyway, we hope to have story time back in the library beginning in June. So we'll see what else we can find and where we'll go. We're going to visit another farm and check out the chicken house. We're going to go inside and we're going to go to the fire station and just places where little ones would like to be and like to see, and maybe climb on some trucks again out at the implement dealership. And
That'd be good.
Cheryl, could you just toss a link to either your Facebook page or YouTube page in the chat so everyone can check that out if they haven't?
Okay, I will.
And by everyone, I mean me. I really
Okay.
want to see. I'm sure everyone else does too, but I'm going to be selfish and really, really want to see that. I like
Okay.
there were Amy.
We'll be brave and let you see it.
No judgment. I live I like 2 time zones away. I've got nothing to do. I'm not going to cause trouble, I promise. So we're good. Amy, about your surveys, and again, if you can unmute, go ahead. If not, chat's fine. But were those done to figure out the kind of programming people wanted? Is that what I'm getting from that?
To help
Perfect.
figure out new programming. And they gave ideas back. That's awesome, Amy.
I love it. Yeah. And then just in the chat, funeral planning, retirement planning, local museums. And I think I saw Michael's like Mr. Rogers pop up when we were talking to Cheryl about her tours there. So
Yeah.
I love it. I pictured the time when he goes to the saxophone pressing machine. That's my favorite. Anyway, I get sidetracked. I'm like Doug. Yeah, we'll be one of those dogs that way. So just to end, let me know, is there something else that you want to talk about? What tools do you have that we haven't talked about that you want to share with your fellow librarians, with your friends that are in this call? And other than that, thank you. I'm happy to chat with anyone. If you want to reach out to me, email is the best. If you want to see me randomly tweet every few months or so about the Calgary Flames games, then Twitter's the way. And if you want to see sporadic pictures of bread, then that's Instagram. But thank you, everyone, for coming. I want to hear what tools people have, if there are any, we've got what, just a couple minutes, Mary Beth?
Yeah. Just a
So-
few minutes. Go ahead and put those in the chat or unmute yourself and let us know. Amy has the basic display they had up for the community activity, and she sends a link there. We have the link for the Facebook page in the chat as well. Amy does say that the downside for the request through the utility flyer is that they tried some of that new programming, they advertised it and nobody showed up. So best laid plans, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it's the timing too. Sometimes It's just like, it's a great idea, it just didn't work this time. So, put it on hiatus and try it again later.
And that's really it too. It doesn't hurt to try again, but it's also smart to know when, I tried this and it's not going to work for our community. So I don't need to waste any more time trying to make this fit into where I'm at. So.
All right, last call for any tools that you're using for your programming, for your marketing. I did record this session, and I'm going to save the chat so we have those links as well. Oh, Amy does have one. Right now, patrons don't want fixed programming, more drop in and pick up, but lots of interest in summer activities. And she's starting to feel the pressure for summer library, LOL. So.
If nothing else, just remember you're not alone, right? We've got other people that are here to help us, and we all want to see each other succeed. So get going. Let's do this.
Think about your neighboring libraries and if you can partner with them to bring in a big presenter or something like that. Barb at Formosa says, we have a big electronic signboard that we use, and it is wonderful. And I think it's right across the street from the library, if I'm right. It might be right there by the city building. I'm having trouble picturing it. So that's good, that electronic sign that I'm guessing it's for the whole community that then the library can share as well. Okay. Yes, on Main Street. Okay, thank you, Barb. I'm gonna, next time I'm in Formosa, I'm gonna make sure I take a picture of it. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. And Patrick, do you have any final words of wisdom to leave us with, or?
Not wisdom, but I cannot wait until ARSL is in Kansas for real instead of pretend, and I can actually get to see people there. Come say hi. I will try and be as many places as I can, and want Kansas to be one of those places too. So thank you everyone for coming. Go and do. Let's go have fun.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for your time today. We really appreciated it. I think we got a lot out of it, and it's always good to hear insight from another accidental librarian out there. I am going to stop